In May of this year, 2020, I was stuck in a hotel quarantine room in Sydney when I saw these three pictures for a 1997 Toyota Hiace Super Custom G online. Out of respect to Flossie Carter, the G stands for gangster. The car was still in Japan, and it had just been listed for sale by Custom Coaster Conversions in New South Wales, and I know that most of their cars sell even before they land in Australia, so I bought it. 4.5 months later, I got the call. The car had already been to Brisbane and New South Wales, gone through its compliance process and registration, and it had finally arrived in Perth. So I hopped in an Uber and went to pick it up. As you may or may not know already, it did break down on the way back. By no fault of the car's, one of the rear brakes was over-adjusted and it overheated. Not a biggie, the car was sent to Dave at Lehman Mechanical in Bentley. They've looked after me for years and they're brilliant at everything, but they just happen to specialise in vans, trucks, four-wheel drives and diesels, so they were already the perfect workshop. A week later, I picked the car up and got to work. Whenever I buy a used car, especially one that's 23 years old, I like to get it to day zero in terms of maintenance. That way, not only do I sleep better at night, but I know that the car's in the best mechanical condition possible. Lehman Mechanical also completely flushed the cooling system and replaced it with Penrite's red long life coolant and demineralized water. They also replaced the automatic transmission filter and refilled the gearbox with Penrite's semi-synthetic ATF. So now the car shifts like butter. Dave also replaced the now boiled over brake fluid. Then I finished off the driveline service by replacing the front diff oil and the transfer case oil. Again, I used Penrite 75W90 semi-synthetic gear oil. As part of the compliance process, Custom Coaster Conversions serviced the engine before the car left New South Wales by boat. They replaced the engine oil and filter as well as the air filter. The car recently had a timing belt change, so that didn't need to be done, but I did make sure to do all of the smaller things like greasing the U-joints.
I noticed that regardless of whether the engine is cold or if I've just driven it and it's warm, the glow plugs will only stay on for about 1 second. And because the heater blows warm, after it's running, but the gauge says it's cold, it means that there's a fault either within the gauge or the temperature sensor. So I had a look. So this single wire sensor is the one that controls the temperature gauge. I've ordered a replacement, it's $33, I'll go pick it up this afternoon.
With the car mechanically completed, it was time to focus on protecting the exterior and interior from WA's harsh summer. It frequently gets to above 40 Celsius here, and it's a dry, arid heat, kind of like Arizona. The car's original pearl white over titanium paint and factory decals wouldn't stand a chance, so I began by cleaning the wheels. I actually hated these wheels when I saw the pictures of the car. I couldn't wait to get rid of them, but the second I saw it in real life, I was sold. They're Motoro Motos, 90s Japanese wheels, and they suit the car perfectly. At some point, I'll remove the wheels and do the inside barrels as well. Then I wash the car using dishwashing liquid, and before you say anything, I'm using dishwashing liquid to remove any residual polish or wax, as Custom Coaster Conversions have detailed this car to the 10th degree. Not only did they machine polish the entire vehicle and do the interior, they went as far as detailing and respraying the entire underbody. I actually bought some underbody paint, as in one of the photos they sent me, I noticed the tiniest amount of surface rust on the spare wheel carrier, but they did it all for me. Once cleaned and dried, I apply the first of 2 coats of ceramic. I'm using Turtle Wax's hybrid ceramic coating. This stuff had jaw-dropping results from YouTube reviews and durability tests, so 2 coats should last an entire year. I apply the first coat, and then I let the car cure for 2 days. Afterwards, I washed the entire car again and applied the second coat. Then I used a woolen buffing wheel on my polisher to flatten everything out and bring it all to a deep shine. Next, I steam cleaned 23 years worth of dust and spilt oil from the engine and engine compartment, and I also steam cleaned all 3 of the sunroofs, except the camera stopped working. I applied 303 aerospace protectant to all of the rubber seals on the engine bay and the sunroofs, and then I lubricated the sunroof sliders and mechanisms. I applied 4 coats of 303 aerospace protectant to the interior trim and dash, and I did it over 2 days to allow the product to soak in. Then I vacuumed the car and I applied 2 cans of Scotchgard fabric protection. Finally, it was time to lubricate all of the door hinges, sliders, latches, keyholes, and window guides. I'm using a silicone-based spray that's safe to use on rubber, and it goes on wet, but then it dries, so it doesn't catch dust and debris. A good tip is to spray something like WD-40 into the water drain holes at the bottom of the doors. On a warm day, the liquid will condensate and form a protective, rust-proof barrier inside the doors. I removed the aftermarket headlights as one of the park lights wasn't working, only to find it wasn't plugged in. But in doing so, I realized that these lights must have been on the car for about 20 years. A quick Google search returned nothing, so they're definitely period correct. So while I was at it, I also cleaned it up. With the car mechanically sound and the interior and exterior protected, it was time to protect it from thieves. So I went to Dynamco in Malaga and I picked out a security system. Rob from Sergi Services was on hand and he installed it. I also noticed on the way there that the left wheel had quite a significant negative camber when compared to the right. So I went to Petter Suspension, who confirmed that the alignment was out significantly between the 2 wheels, and they couldn't find a template for a Hiace 4-wheel drive. I guess that's the trouble of having an import car here. So after a bit of googling, everything was brought back into line. The few things left to do is to have the 2 front windows tinted, not only to match the rest of the car and protect the interior from UV light, and of course stop me from burning, and also I ordered a new stereo from eBay as the car didn't come with one. It's an Android 10 unit with GPS, it's got a micro SD slot, USB, Bluetooth, reversing camera, and I guess most importantly these days, Wi-Fi. So you can download any app you want or hotspot from your phone and treat it like a tablet. And so here it is. The reason that I bought this car is simple. It's an appreciating asset. These used to be common everywhere, but it's gone through what I call common car syndrome. Common car syndrome is when a car is so common and abundant that it's like milk, if that makes sense. It's useful and easily attainable, but not noteworthy enough to be savoured. So they get used and sold on and on for less and less money as they depreciate. At some point, people stop caring for them, or they're just not worth putting money into, or they've been hacked. I mean, they've been lowered, put on ugly mags that look pretty cool today, but are tacky tomorrow. Remember like the big chrome phase back in early 2000s? Or, you know, people strip out the interiors and whatnot. So fast forward 10 years or more, you have hardly any nice examples left. And time has been really good to Toyota 4-wheel drives from the 90s. Ever since Top Gear did that Unbreakable Hilux video, the value, especially of turbo diesel Toyotas from the 90s that are 4-wheel drives, they've gone through the roof. And I guess it comes down to supply and demand. Now these are becoming really desirable in North America and Canada. They're importing the last remaining survivors out of Japan by the hundreds. Cars that have been loved and held on to, they're all going. And it's because it's all new to the Canadians and Americans. They're doing what we used to do, or I guess when I say we, New Zealanders and Australians and people around the world that had these, what they used to do to these things in the 90s and early 2000s. And in the case of the Hiace, strip them out, make them into camper vans, and basically just drive them around and use them, bounce them off trees, take them down the beach. And pretty soon, finding a nice example of one of these will be like trying to find a pulled pork sandwich in Iran. You just won't. So this one has 158,000 kilometers. It's got a 1KZ TE engine, so it's a 3-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesel. It's matched to a 4-speed automatic, and power is sent to all 4 wheels through a full-time 4-wheel drive system. There's a solid coil-sprung rear end and independent torsion front. It makes about 140 horsepower and about 330 newton meters of torque. But boost comes on really fast and it's really potent. This thing feels every bit as strong as my old turbo diesel 80 series Land Cruiser, and it keeps up with traffic easily. It can even dart through intersections, unlike the older Toyotas. I remember, I think it was my mum, she had an old Hilux Surf, and pulling out at intersections was just terrifying in that thing. You'd have to floor it, you close your eyes knowing there's a bus coming towards you, and you hope the turbo wakes up in time to spare your life. This isn't like that. This one also has the triple sunroofs, so the front sunroof is manual and it just pops straight up. The middle one is powered and it's huge. It's like a meter by a meter. It slides all the way back, and then the rear sunroof is awesome. It's awesome 90s Japanese engineering. It lifts straight up like a spoiler. Then you have the seats. So this one has the brown velour interior, which I used to hate growing up. It used to make me want to throw up, but now I love it. This car is an 8-seater, and the middle row can swivel to face the rearmost seats, so backwards, or it can turn to face the front. And every person has a cup holder, and there's about 800 map lights and reading lights and ambient lights. There's a standalone climate control AC system in the back with its own compressor, its own condenser, the whole 9 yards. And obviously there's a climate controlled AC system in the front. There's a standalone heater for the back with its own controls, and the sliding door has an automatic latch. So if someone weak, or say a child, closes it and it's not fully latched, it'll pull itself in electronically. Then there's the design. So when I put pictures of this up on social media, I had like 9 people message me asking why I bought a Bongo van. And we call these things Bongo vans growing up because, well, there was a couple of reasons. I'll explain one. Mazda had a van called the Mazda Bongo, and Nissan had a van called the Nissan Homie. And of course there was this, the Hiace Super Custom. All 3 were popular, but the Hiace prevailed. The others felt like something from the 80s, which I guess they kind of were because they were designed in the 80s, and they were also commercial vans in disguise, whereas this generation of Hiace was truly the last passenger designed van. It wasn't based off its commercial cousin. The trim is different, the moldings are different, the lights are different, and just looking around at it, now that I've got it, the time and effort and money that Toyota would have put into just creating the interior for this thing would have been eye-watering. If you look at the Mazda Bongo compared to this, you can see just how much extra effort went into the Hiace. Take the side windows, for example. Toyota could have done what everyone else did, but they didn't. They could have just put some steel frame windows in, but they went through the trouble of creating this seamless, frameless glass for that sleek, modern look. And 23 years later, it's paid off. It still looks good. And inside, this still just feels like a car. It doesn't feel like an old car, and that's a testament to, I guess, this thing's over-engineering. It doesn't rattle, there are no squeaks, and it does have some, I guess, modern features. It's got ABS, it's got airbags, it won't stop for you, it doesn't have radar cruise control, and it won't keep you in your lane. So I guess you still need to know how to drive it to drive it. But it does have power steering, it's got power mirrors, power brakes, there's central locking, electric windows, climate air conditioning throughout, there's even electric curtains. And when you couple that with the bulletproof Toyota badge and the four-wheel drive system, a little bit of rarity and nostalgia, and the ability to take anyone or anything almost anywhere, and I think it's a pretty cool way to get around. I think I should really give a big shout out to Hugo and the team at Custom Coaster Conversions for getting me this van in such mint condition. With Custom Coaster Conversions, you just pay the one price, and if the car needs whatever done to it, that's on them. So you get the car, compliance, registration. As part of compliance, they service the car, so I'm sure they look at everything, but they service the engine and a couple of filters. You also get attention to detail in the last part of things. So as part of compliance, they are meant to change the tires and put some new tires on. And Hugo, the owner of Custom Coaster Conversions, knew that I would be driving on dirt roads and using this car for traveling. And so while he could have gone out and ordered the cheapest highway terrain tires possible, and given the number of cars that he does all of the time, he could probably get tires for next to nothing. But he didn't do that. He went out and fitted Cooper Discoverer all-terrains on my car. And that's attention to detail that most car dealers don't have these days. I also noticed in some of the pictures that the rear bumper of the car was scratched up and there were quite a few paint chips that were missing. I also noticed a tiny bit of surface rust on the underside of the car, which I was going to mask up and respray, and this car was actually missing the third row of seats in the back. And I mentioned to Hugo that I really wanted an 8-seater and I wanted the car to be complete. So when I got the car, they had completely detailed and resprayed the entire underbody. Then I looked at the rear bumper and it looked like it was brand new. There was another van that was being stripped out for a camper van conversion, and at no extra cost to me, they took the rear seats from that car and fit it to mine. Last reason I want to recommend him is I actually never spoke to him on the phone. I bought it entirely via email. I just never had the need to call him on the phone and speak to him, except when the car got here and broke down on the first day. As it was being loaded onto the tow truck, I gave him a call, and he said one thing to me: send me the bill. That's pretty good service if you ask me. So that's my car. I hope it answers any curiosities that you might have had about it, and as always, thanks for watching.